Welcome to the Waiting List podcast. Tell us a story.
It's like many things you start building from scratch.
And then I'm like, wait, I really do like watches because
You've seen so many watches that makes you excited.
I think I really do like watches.
Yeah. I think it's a great way to see if you are a watch enthusiast. Right, welcome to the Waiting List podcast, where I am joined by my two co-hosts, the Justin Bieber-loving Lung Lung and the Aldous Hodge-loving Jacqueline. Today we welcome Serge.
What?
I think you got it the wrong way around.
I definitely got it the right way round. Today we welcome Serge, who is the CEO and publisher of Europastar, which is a watch publication that has been running for over 90 years and actually is his family business. So welcome, Serge, to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I believe you are fourth generation. Is that right?
Yeah, it's fourth generation. Our publication is actually in its 94th year of running under different names. So we are heading towards the 100 years.
Wow.
Wow.
But
right.
Yeah, I hope I don't sound too old by saying that.
No, it's not at all.
We are all young on this show. There is no old
exactly.
Yeah.
So, sorry for bringing something a bit of an older vibe, but that's the history, and I'm very happy to be with you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Before we start and get into it, I just want to tell our audience that if you aren't following us yet on Instagram, make sure you do. You'll find myself at Mr. Daniel Sum. You'll find Lung Lung at Lung Lung Tun, which is spelled THUN, and that's all one word. And Jacqueline at A Dose of Time. Serge can also be found at Europastar. Is that right, Serge?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. And for those that are wondering why I've changed from Shanghai Watch Gang, it's because Shanghai Watch Gang, the initial purpose of it was to be a voice for the community. And increasingly, it's been my voice, which, it wasn't what it was set up for, to be, which is why I've opened up my own account. But please reach out if you haven't. I can tell you we all love getting your messages, every one of us, and it means a lot to us. Anyway, now back to this. I've had the pleasure of knowing Serge for a few years now, and I believe I met you in Switzerland during Basel, where you had a stand and you had your magazines, and you, as a publisher, it isn't just magazines that you do. You do books as well. But I think you're more familiar with a guest we've had on previously on the show, Kelvin, right? You're constantly liaising with Kelvin, right?
Yes, exactly. I've had the pleasure of knowing you since this day in Baselworld, where we had actually our booth. That was was it the last ever Baselworld? So it was we didn't know it back then, but it was we were living a historical moment. So we met on the deck of the Titanic, and no, but let's hope that there will be a new chapter for the Basel Fair. They are trying to do a new show, so maybe we're gonna talk about it. But that was a real pleasure to meet you there, and then I had the chance when we could still travel to visit you in Shanghai.
Yeah, and I enjoyed taking you around and enjoying the delights of Shanghai, the many delights of Shanghai, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Great memories.
So I think we're going to take it quite leisurely today. I don't know when this will come out, but we've done a few dark episodes recently. It's mid-March right now. So I'm going to take this one easy because the dark ones, I'm telling you, they take way too much out of me, right? So let's spill the tea. Are you ready?
Ready.
Right. My understanding of Europastar is that it is a bit different to the other publications that we've had on the show before, in that it started off as a trade magazine, right? Is that right? Or, is it still a trade magazine? And actually, how did that actually start as your family business?
Yeah, so it's still a trade magazine, and it's always been a trade magazine. And before maybe the word community had a sense, today we talk about watch community. The goal of Europastar was always to kind of link the people in this community. When there was no internet, there was rarely planes. You had to take your steamboat to go from one place to another. So it was in the 20s. Actually, my great grandfather, he was a businessman. He was in his 20s, so 100 years ago, and he came from a city near Grenchen, actually, called Soler, which is a city that has also a history in watchmaking. You have several older manufacturers who are from there, and actually, so he wondered what to do, and as many people in this area of the world in Switzerland, he decided to found his own watch brands, and so it was a brand called Transmarine. So you already had the idea of traveling and of seeing new worlds, because as you know, Switzerland is a landlocked country. So we Swiss, we want to have the opportunity to go overseas, to travel, and watchmaking has always been linked to the oceans. So he traveled a lot actually for these brands. He went to Egypt. He went to India, and I have some in the family book. And actually, we did a small history booklet about it a few years ago. We still have some nice pictures of him on a donkey in front of the Sphinx in Cairo or in India with some kind of fakirs and Maharaja. So he was, yeah. And anyway, so and that's while he was traveling to sell watches. He was visiting a lot of retailers and watch retailers, and he noticed that there was a kind of a mismatch in communication or lack of communication between the brands, the Swiss brands, and the retailers around the world. So it was there were publications inside Switzerland, but there was no publication dedicated to the retail world and really functioning as a trade magazine. So that's how it started. Actually, first what he did was he did a kind of digest of all the places in Switzerland that produced either watches or components. So it was a bit of a Routledge guide or in a Michelin guide of the of the watchmaking industry, and there you had all the addresses, and he even had some guides to visit Geneva or Basel. Anyway, he started like that as a publisher, and soon enough, these kind of digests became publications, and little by little, over the years, he founded a network of watch magazines. Well, we call them watch magazines, but they were really like industry publications. And the main goal, the main purpose was to show the novelties coming from Switzerland to retailers around the world. So you had, for instance, these publications in Spanish or in Portuguese. So for Latin America, you had in English, you had in Chinese actually already, in Thai, in Urdu for India, and that was really what was interesting, is that these magazines were shipped already all around the world decades ago.
Okay, that's really interesting, because it really is then that there isn't been somebody that has done this on our show before. So were you kind of co-aligned with Baselworld? I mean, when was Baselworld established, and when was your magazine established?
So Basel was established actually in 1918, and right after the First World War, because it was like, well, it's as you know, after there is a big war, a big shock in the world, you need to find new solutions. So after the war, they decided to do actually what was in Basel. It was not even dedicated only to watches, but basically what Switzerland had to provide. It was like a show for Switzerland, and among them watches. So we started. Actually, we were. I mentioned the Titanic. It's before, but it started around the era of the Titanic, and we started in the interwar period in the 20s, and we've been an exhibitor at Basel for over 80 years. And I remember when I was a kid, I went to Basel when I was 10 or 12 years old to help my family just distributing the magazines and so kind of a youngster job, and that were great memories.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Basel, how has Basel changed from recently to how it was before? Like as a child, how do you remember Baselworld? And then in more recent times, what's your impression of it?
Well, for me, it was really like an exotic place. It was really, they call it Baselworld. And for me as a kid, it was really the world, because you saw people from all around the world. You see, there was this kind of luxury. So it was really like, and I remember you are I think you are from Hong Kong, Long Long. Oh no, you are from Singapore, sorry. But every year, my father used to go to Hong Kong for the fair, that the HKTDC, and for me it was like, wow, this is crazy. He's gonna take the plane. He's gonna go there, and when I and I always wanted him to take me there, but he didn't, so I had to go by myself later on. But so I was just daydreaming.
Expensive. It's expensive.
Expensive, yeah. I was an expensive kid. So then actually I at Basel, it was kind of this exotic place, really, because you had all this, and back then we had publications for pearls, also the pearls from Tahiti, from Polynesia. And I remember they did this kind of evening with Polynesian dancing, and when you're a kid, everything seems bigger, everything seems like more magical, and so that was really some great memories. So with Basel, and I think for many people in the industry, you didn't need to be a kid, but it's in the heart of many people, I think, and maybe that's what we're missing today. It's this kind of interactions.
And how do you think? I mean, what do you think the mistakes were with Baselworld?
Well, I'm gonna take the comparison with the ship again. It's like the bigger the ship, the harder it is to manage, and it became a huge ship. And today, with all this digital transformation, you need to have a smaller boat to be very agile, and it's more and more difficult, I think, to find a common denominator between so many different brands, so many different groups, so many different industries. Maybe a good thing from this pandemic will be that the brands will try to do more things together, but it could also be the opposite. So it's hard to say, but I think it's difficult to unite an industry. It was maybe easier when the industry was smaller, and when all the decisions were made in Switzerland.
Yeah. So
have
as
all
a kid,
of you been to Baselworld?
I have.
Long?
I don't know about Long.
No, I haven't.
So I went to the last one, like Serge said. It's to be honest, I found the independent section very fun. To see the new novelties and everything. But in terms of the other stuff, first of all, it's a B2B thing, so you can't always just get in, because there's lots of appointments made for all their retailers, distributors, the media. So it's not really open to public, which is a bit of a shame. Luckily, we had a few contacts that allowed us to get into certain places. Like I don't think we didn't even try Rolex, but we managed to get into Patek. We went into Oris. We went into most of them, to be honest. But you know, because it's geared to the B2B, there's not actually many people there to kind of show you the pieces and talk to you about the pieces as a consumer, as a customer. So you're kind of left to your own devices. So if you're not really into watches, it's going to be a struggle, and you don't have the information, because you might see the watches like placed there, but you won't be able to get to them, and there will be no other information unless somebody gives you that information. So you're constantly then looking online, because all the blogs are putting everything online as fast as they can. But that is totally why I enjoyed the independent section, because you get to meet the watchmaker who absolutely knows the brand inside out. You get to really touch and feel the pieces. It's just like a little treasure cave, really, and you feel special because you're seeing the pieces before anybody else is. Right. You get to take photos with all your heroes. They're like literally walking around, and you stop them and say, hey, can I take a photo? I love your work, and all this kind of stuff. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Well, and the independents, they all went to Basel to try to find retailers, and when they didn't have a stand like Max, who you know well, or Felix and from Overk, of course, they all went there with their pieces, trying their luck.
That's right.
I remember I work actually with my uncle, and before I arrived in the magazine, he met Benoît Mintiens from Ressence several times. Just he came to the stand, just showing the watch, and then the brand grew, and that was like kind of an incubator for new brands, because you had this mix of big brands, smaller brands, and that was the place to be. Yeah,
I mean, just to let the audience know, you had Kari, Grunefeld, and then I apologize because I forgot the two other brands that were there sharing a small area. So Kari's area would have been about 9 meters squared, so very small, right? Because Basel, as we know, is actually very, very expensive now to advertise, to have a booth there. So how we see these people, and actually how they were actually occupying Baselworld, their footprint was actually very small. Like you say, Max Buser, Urwerk, even Chapek, Recepi, they had actually their own booth and own area. But it was just a lot of fun. But I wanted to ask, as a kid, you saw all these things, and to us as being watch lovers, it sounds very, very magical. But is this something that you wanted to do in terms of publishing? Were you interested in watches? Is that what really kickstarted it?
This was a very good memory, but my dream was always to be a journalist. So I studied journalism, and I had this. Of course, it was. We are in Switzerland. I went to Basel, so I knew about watches, and I had an interest in it. But mainly, my interest was really writing about the people, writing about the events, writing. Actually, to be honest, I wanted to write about sports because I love soccer, and I wanted to be a sport journalist. So and that's. I actually before writing about watches, I worked for several media, but more in politics or finance or economics, and then in 2014 actually I joined Europastar, but it's not like we had a talk and to see what I want to do. I always wanted to be a journalist, and I pursued this way. So that was more how it went. It's true that you have I would say today you have two kinds of journalists in the watch industry. You have people who were like journalists before in other areas, and then they switch for one reason or another to covering watches or jewelry or the luxury industry. And you also have collectors, and also such as you guys who end up producing content and becoming a kind of a media. And we also see the retailers becoming some kind of media, or the pre-owned, like you see Watchbox having a studio. And today, and everyone can be a media in some way. But my dream was always writing. It happens that I write about watches, and I love watches. But my primary goal was to be a journalist.
Okay. I actually interviewed somebody that was also a writer yesterday, and for that person, it was actually a real outlet for him, like of comfort, to write. Was writing for you something that how did you develop that, and how did you know that's what you wanted to do? Were you always writing, or?
Actually, I started with comic books.
Oh.
Of course, I started reading with comic books, and I don't know if you know him, but the usually in the French-speaking world, the first comic book we have, well, besides Mickey Mouse
Asterix.
or Donald,
I was thinking Asterix, yeah.
There is Asterix, of course, and
Tintin.
there is also Tintin, exactly. And as you remember, Tintin is a reporter. So he was my hero, and I actually then I started drawing comics myself, and starting to create stories with comics. And so I was actually sketching the comics, and there is a little bubble with the text. So that's how I started, and I did that for a long time. And I never really wrote for myself on the side. Like I didn't like wrote except for articles, except when there was like I am not an author in the way that I need other people to feed me with information, and then I digest the information. I took the ingredients from several interviews, and then I translate them into an article. But that's the difference between, I guess, an author and a journalist. But anyway, that all started with comic books. And
so there's actually a Tintin store, official Tintin store in Shanghai. So I'm going to go down there and buy something for you, to give to you next time, so that I'll always remember you as Serge Tintin. It's funny because like the publication for Tintin is actually Herge, right? Is it Herge?
LG. It's pronounced, it's LG. It's true.
Right.
It's quite close.
Yeah, it's quite close to your name.
There is a Tintin watch. It's produced by Icewatch. Icewatch has the license for Tintin, and of course, I think Swatch did a Tintin watch in the 80s. They are that they are huge collectors of Tintin objects. It's a bit like collecting watches, but all things Tintin and the original scripts can be worth like thousands. It's another collecting side.
On this show, we don't know Icewatch, but Longlong's a really massive fan of Icelink. Icelink watches.
Actually, I did buy an Ice-Watch, by the way, when I was younger.
Okay. Yeah.
They're not like super cheap, but they're like something you buy. When I bought it, it was about 100 Sing, which is about like 600 HKD.
Okay.
But for like a plastic watch,
They are from Belgium actually. So and Tintin is from Belgium as well. That's why they have this partnership. But so that's that's how it all started with comic books.
So as you became more experienced, and now you are the CEO and publisher of Europastar, how was that transition from your father to you taking over the company? And how does that dynamic work?
Yeah, it's I don't know if you've ever worked in a family business. I think you do, Daniel. No?
I do.
Yeah. So it's
no, the way you say it wasn't like positive.
No, but the pros and the cons. That's what I mean, right? It's the pros is that you can be. I mean, it's emotional. It's something like it's a family business. So you had your ancestors doing it as well, and it's interesting. And you speak your mind. You're not afraid to tell your
pretty
boss.
direct.
It's pretty direct,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, the cons is that it's difficult to separate private and professional.
Agree.
But anyway, today it is, even if it's not your father or your uncle or your grandfather. Anyway, it's difficult to separate private from professional. So what happened is that actually I was working as a journalist and nothing to do with watches in Switzerland, and we had a editor in my actually. So there were always two journalists. The editor in chief is my uncle Pierre, and he's also a movie director. So once in a while, every 2 to 3 years, he would actually have a absentee leave for maybe a few months to shoot a new movie. That's also the good aspects in a family business. You can run it as you like, and you can take some time off at some point and make movies or make.
Or
Anyway.
pretend to work in the Dominican Republic, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm doing right now. So but I think we are now with Zoom. You can work in your pajamas. So I think everyone can work now in their own configuration. But yeah, it was like. So in 2014, he called me because my father called me because he told me, look, I have a problem because, as you know, we are a publishing house, so we need to publish. But I have no journalists left because my uncle was shooting a movie and the other journalist was going to another media. So he said for the next 6 months, I need to do 3 magazines and I have no journalists. So, but it's a big step to join a family business. I say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 50%. I'm going to keep my current job and as a journalist outside of the watch world, and then for 50% I'm going to do Europastar to see if I like it. And what happened is that I saw that there was a need for change, a need for evolution, a need for it was really a time were changing, if you say, and there was a need for a radical, not radical, let's say, but a good change and a good boost, and it was exciting as well to go on with this media. So then after a year, I say, okay, we're gonna continue.
Okay, right. So you actually touch on the point, which is, you come into this business as a journalist, and you've got your father there who's been running it for many years, and immediately you say, I've got a lot of radical ideas. We should be doing this and that. How was that? Did you have resistance from your father, or did he give you more freedom?
Yeah, it's to be honest, it's pretty free. And when I say radical, I am Swiss, so I'm not a very radical person. In Switzerland, when we say radical, it's not like the American
you eat some
way.
Chocolate,
It's a Swiss radical, so it's moderate radical. So it was more like redoing the layout and the design and increasing the online presence and just also having new processes. And it was so I work actually with my father for the business. The third generation is still there. I mean, I don't want to say that they are out of the business. I still
out of
work
the door.
with my
See
father.
you later. Give me the shares.
No, and it's a big. It's still of course a family business, and I'm working with my uncle on the editorial aspect and with my father on the business aspect. So at least there's a clear dialogue with each one. Okay. And so we have kind of we talk a lot. It's not because it's a small business, so we can go in the direction that we want. That's the good thing.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Because it's not always like that, I can assure people. But
we feel that you
when
have.
Did you?
Do you have something to say, Danielle?
Yeah.
No, I don't have anything to say.
When did you work in the family business?
Who?
You like when you were a kid, I know you were working like for
Yeah, I was doing
the
that, and then like I then opened a couple of restaurants,
yeah.
and then also a
Oh,
lot of the we have other business in the UK which I
right.
handle. Yeah,
Okay.
so I handle like a section of the business, but I don't
Okay.
handle all of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But would it be fair to say, Serge, that you inherited the family business at a pretty tough time with, as we say, trade fairs struggling to have a necessity in today's watch industry? And also, as you say, a lot of media moving on to online. Do you ever worry that your family business may come to an end on your watch? It sounds such a dick question to
Ooh,
ask,
I
but
thought we weren't gonna go heavy.
but
Yeah.
But
No, it's
I was trying to think, how do I phrase it in a
no,
different
no.
way?
Do you have any
It's a
worries?
pun.
Do you have any concerns?
It's a pun with the word watch.
Yes.
Actually, you know what we say. I don't know if in Chinese also or in other languages you say the same, but we say that the first generation they are creators. Then the second generation they leave out of the what the first generation did, and the third generation usually destroys everything. So so now we
It's good that you have a nice
pass.
positive outlook on it. Yeah.
I
I'm
don't
sure the
think
company's very confident with you at the helm.
yeah. I don't think there's like a direct transliteration of that, but then there is a saying in Chinese. It's called 富不过三代,
Yeah, I was
which
gonna
is
say that.
which is
Yeah,
like
I was thinking
the third generation is basically the generation where everything goes to shit.
Yeah,
But
like the
act,
wealth
act,
cannot transcend three
Yeah.
generations.
The
Yeah.
wealth does not pass the third generation. But I actually
exactly.
thought, Serge, you were going to say that the third generation
Is the one
then
that
have to innovate or
yeah,
something like
No,
that.
that's
but
No,
no, but
so just like fuck,
no,
it's over.
Daniel, I don't care about it because I'm not the third generation. I'm
Oh,
the
sorry.
fourth
you're the fourth.
generation.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does
Okay,
that mean then?
so
so
he made it. So
so
His
from
dad made
so
it.
yeah.
the problem is that the saying ends at the third generation. We don't have the saying for the fourth generation. So
So it
so
sounds like what you're saying is that your great
Into
grandfather like created something, the second generation lived and developed it, the third generation, which would actually be your father, like fucked it up, and then it's down to you to bring it back.
no, I wouldn't say it like that. That would be that would be
Mhm.
far from what I want to say actually, because to be honest, every generation had its struggles. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, we complain today about the pandemic, but what about the Second World War?
Exactly.
What about the Cold War? What about
Mhm.
even the financial crisis in 2008 was really bloody, and today we have the pandemic, and it's true that maybe there is the biggest structural change for the media for the last century with the internet, or even some say for the world since the invention of printing. It's been the biggest change has been these last years and I truly believe so, because it's in everyday's life that has changed so much, and it's
Mm.
true for the media, it's true for the watch industry, and for so many industries. So no, I'm grateful to my father and my uncle, and they didn't fuck it up at all.
I'm joking. Right. So, aside from what you say, the obvious about the migration from print to online, what other challenges do publications face? And how do you plan to move forward in this challenging time?
Well, I think the main challenge for all the media today is to try to remain independent, to have a kind of a good balance of, in our case, of contents on print and digital. And I think there is not a one recipe for everyone, because as you see, even the big business like the New York Times or the Washington Post or many media, they have different recipes. And you see the Guardian. The Guardian is based, it's a foundation. It's based on people donating. The advertisement is definitely still strong. The subscription model is interesting, and I think we are in a Netflix era where people are. The good news is that I think people are ready to pay again for good content, and I think on the longer run, what I truly hope is that the subscription model can develop as well and balance with the advertisement and with other tools for the publishers. But yeah, it's a balance to find, I would say.
Okay, like you touch on the subscription model. Now, please correct me, because I was thinking about this last night in preparation of this interview. You know, before, when you had newspapers and all these magazines, people were also paying for this content. So you used to pay for your newspaper, you used to go to the news agents and buy your magazine. And also the magazines were making money from advertising, but it wasn't solely from advertising, right? But
Exactly.
a lot of the media online now, or a lot of media, is really coming from advertising, you know, large agencies that are putting out. So the content is all geared towards just one-sided. Is it lopsided? But before, you know, you still had to think about the reader, because he was also contributing in some way to your revenue. And so you maybe had a more balanced article, rather than now where a lot of it is advertising based. Is that a fair thing to say? Have I got that right, or I slightly got that wrong?
Yeah, I think you've got that right, partly because there is also an inflation, an extraordinary inflation of information everywhere. So what we didn't have back then was this amount of this volume of information that you find everywhere. And we are in the era of fake news, of course, as well. So we are in an era where you can read a lot of different things. You don't have like I don't think you have an authoritative voice. It's a lot of opinions. So it's fascinating at the same time to see all of that. In our case, what I can say is that I modestly believe that we improved the content, and because we were mostly funded by advertisements, it was a golden age. When you had the golden age of print media, and I also mentioned that Europastar served as the link between the Swiss watch brands and the retailers around the world. There was, of course, content always, but there was also a lot of advertisements, because advertisement as such, in that particular case, was also an information, because the retailers were looking for the new watches. So in the case of the general media and the specialist media, it's already something different. But what I would emphasize is that I think content is key today more than ever, and that the solution for all the media is good content, and then you can find ways, of course, to have advertisement, to have subscriptions. But I strongly believe that today, and I think people become more and more adverse to that kind of mix of advertisement and editorial together, if it's not labeled clearly. Okay. So that's also, I think today what is more important than ever in this era of confusion is to label things clearly, what you propose.
What makes you think that we are close to, that the audience is close to reaccepting subscription models more readily in the mainstream?
It's an assumption, and I hope it's going to be more true in the future. But I would say, if you compare with the music industry or the film industry, where for a while we were all maybe using Napster and some pirates to download music, simply also because there was not the supply of music online. It was either you buy the CDs or, well, you have nothing. If you want to buy online, it was mostly pirates. And then it got organized with Apple Music, with Spotify, and people are ready to pay again. So it's true that once something is free, although there's no such thing as a free lunch, you always pay somehow, maybe with your data. But at the end, if there is enough enough content, people are ready to pay again. And if you think about Netflix or other big platforms, even Microsoft or Adobe, they live with subscriptions, because you subscribe to use softwares, you subscribe to. So that's a sociological change, of course, but we'll see.
So do you think that in that case, maybe is there a future for print?
Well, when I mention paying, it doesn't mean print. It can be, of course, print or digital. But
right.
Yeah, I think also the perception of print has changed, and it used to be, of course, the daily. It's even in the name. You have the daily newspaper is the daily, because you had it every day. But today you don't have paper every day. You don't read necessarily paper every day, because the daily today would be the smartphone. So I think the meaning of the paper has changed, and it's actually quite convenient for the niche industry like the watch industry, because it's something of an experience. And what we noticed during the pandemic is that we could still ship our magazines all around the world. We actually ship to more than 100 countries.
Yeah.
And that was something that people appreciated, because we are always connected, and we like to have something like a different experience. So I sincerely believe that each of them has its own purpose. Today is like a more niche segment, but it's appropriate for a niche segment like watchmaking in a way.
Yeah. Jacqueline, please come in.
I was gonna say a little bit about the print subscription. I absolutely agree that this subscription pattern is coming back with, Netflix and Disney and Amazon Prime and whatnot. But then I was genuinely surprised when my friend told me about several magazines, like lifestyle magazines, that are sold out and people literally have to fight for them every drop. Yeah, there's a magazine, I think they're from Scandinavia. It's called Serial.
Oh yes,
And
I know this one.
yeah, and then there's another one that's kind of like has a bohemian vibe. I forget the name. But the Serial magazine actually did a case study, like a mini case study on it for a project. And that is one of the magazines that people literally set their alarms. It's like a sneaker drop. They go online at this certain time and they order it for this print magazine. You can argue, okay, it's either they first of all, it's really good content. So Serge, definitely agree with you on that. Like in this day and age, content is king, and then you can talk about advertisement and subscription or whatever. But for that magazine, it's like the photography is on point, and then people buy it for traveling purposes when they're making itineraries, or just for the purpose of decorating their home. And people like this young generation loves doing something like that. So that's like when I was genuinely surprised. I was like, oh my God, people are fighting for this print magazine that is sold out every drop. So
I would add to that and say, if the magazine was slightly smaller, so I would see it more as a book, not like a book shape, like maybe a little bit bigger, because I still enjoy, as what you said, Serge, sometimes the advertising, if it's done really well, it's like art. You're looking at it and you think, oh wow, it's so cool, right? If it engages, a lot of the fast media we see doesn't have that depth to it. I recently saw a photograph on Instagram, I'm talking about online again, from SJX, where I think it was Tudor that did some advertising about a guy that was doing stuff with orca whales. And there was some pictures of him in the lakes and everything. And I thought, wow, you know what I mean? Like, I haven't seen content like that actually for longer than I realize. And I thought, I feel a lot more. So there's that. And also, I like reading books. Thanks to Long Long here. And I want to get away from the phone. So when I'm like ready to absorb good stuff, I'm ready to read a book, right? So if the magazine had more long form quality content where I know, okay, when I pick this up, I'm actually going to allocate at least an hour to reading this, and I will not be distracted with my phone because I put my phone on the side. Then for me, I feel the book offers a different touch point, different communication avenue to the smartphone, which I would actually pay for.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it, because it's and it's funny because also it's very personal, because you have some people who say, I don't care about paper and I only want digital. Some other people, they say, okay, I want to have a detox from digital, and I want to also reconnect with a physical object, and then you have people who do both. And that's why I think today you have to use all these different channels for your contents. And I see, of course, and you wouldn't throw away a magazine the same way in the bin, the same way you put an email to the you classify an email or something, or you archive an email. But there is value to both, and I think in a good coexistence. I mean, it's like when there was when the DVDs arrived, and we thought, okay, now nobody is going to go to the movie theaters anymore. And actually, what we see is that we can enjoy different experiences at different times. And I guess the watch industry would have the same question for the arrival of the connected watch as well. And we see that actually people fear that it would be a new quartz crisis, but we see that it's a bit different. It's more like actually mechanical, and vintage has never been as appreciated as today, and in the era of the connected watch. So it tells you something about why the human being has several facets, and is not only like one single consumer, and that's what makes it interesting overall.
Before we finish this episode, there is something I want to bring the attention of the audience to, is that you've actually got an archive section on your site, which actually has moved a lot of the old print. We're talking very early editions. You'll have to inform me from what year to what year, because I know the project was actually crowdfunded, and you can see a lot of these old publications online and flick through it like a magazine. So could you tell us more about that, and what was the thinking behind doing that?
Yeah, that's a very good example of how digital and print can fuse in a way, or can support each other. Because in our history, we've had 2 fires, 1 flooding in our offices in Geneva, where we changed offices. So it means that we lost some of the archives, some of our older editions. So in a way, by digitizing, first we save them. First we can track them back, and then the killer app, if you wish, is that it's the search engine. Because of course in our office in Geneva, we had all these magazines in the office. But let's say you write an article about Rolex or about Audemars and historical brands, and it's difficult to find something relevant if you have to browse through all these older magazines manually. Meanwhile, once you digitize them, you have the search engine. You just type the keywords you want, like on Google, and you immediately have the results. So we did it for ourselves, and we did it also to share knowledge in the community. And so it's both preserving and adding value. And now we're very happy because we see also even bloggers using some of the archives to write maybe new articles that we wouldn't have written ourselves. We see brands using them. We see collectors. It's like
I believe
treasure.
Hodinkee, right? Hodinkee has been using your stuff to actually find the information to make their articles, like
Mm.
Some
finding
of them
the
with
yeah.
Jack Foster Foster, of course, and
Mm.
yeah, it's a tool. I would say it's both a professional and a private tool
Mm.
that allows you to enrich your content and to make good. Like it's like a treasure hunt.
It
You
is. Yeah.
once you go into the
Mhm.
archives and
Mm.
you try to find something, and then you see something else, and
For sure.
it's really the whole vibe of these eras that you find in the pages of the magazine, because it's not like an isolated archive. Sometimes the brands, they present you the history, but it's like one archive, just
Mm.
one page, and then 10 years later another one, and you don't have the spirit of the era. If you go through the magazines from the 70s, which are so popular today in watchmaking, you really feel the spirit of the era, and you see so many brands that don't exist anymore.
Mm.
I would agree. Even the advertising style that you see, I think, I'm not sure if the Royal Oak's there, but I think the Omega stuff is there. Like you see the
Yeah.
old advertising, it's very nostalgic,
Mm.
very
Mhm,
powerful.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is powerful, because today watchmaking is based on emotion, and this is really, and this year in all the conferences we have in Zoom, I see a lot of brands going back to this like emotional, not just heritage, but kind of emotional heritage to have a message, to have something. And I think there's a lot of value there. So that's why we started digitizing everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. As brands actually have a lot of overlap in their when they talk about craftsmanship, I mean, there's a lot of overlap between brands,
Yeah.
and even some stories are very overlapped. To mark out the key differentiation points, you really have to go back in history to find really, again, touch points that communicate with the collector and enthusiast on
Yeah.
why your brand is still so special. Because knowledge is so accessible these days. You know, everybody can have, well, be a dilettante at most stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, totally. And it's a great source of inspiration as well. For you see new brands popping up everywhere, and with young entrepreneurs, and many of them are fascinated by all these designs, especially the designs. There's some
Yeah.
crazy designs,
Yeah.
and some brands you don't believe it.
Right. So unfortunately, we've run out of time for this episode, but you know what? We're going to get you back on a later date and chat a little bit more with you, Serge. It's literally like having tea and biscuits with you, but that wouldn't really be true, because Long there would probably have eaten all the biscuits if there had been any. You really got to keep an eye on her. You really got to keep an eye.
Yeah.
Things that are edible seem to go awry when she's around for some reason.
Edible.
Thanks.
But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to the Waiting List podcast. Hit the subscribe button, and the next episode will come straight to your phone as soon as it's ready. Whilst I'm here, please remember to leave a nice review and follow us on Instagram at the Waiting List podcast.